Klinger, welcome. It's good to have you here. We really appreciate your effort in joining us today.
I'll do what I can.
You know, I heard something from your relative or your relative's husband that sort of intrigued me. He said that you still own the first car that you owned. You still have it.
Still got the first vehicle ever owned.
That sort of suggests to me that you're a guy that holds on to things and remembers things and keeps old things. Is that accurate?
46 Chevrolet pickup in June the 6th, I think, in 46. Still got it.
46 Chevrolet pickup, and you still have it out there?
Still have it.
You have it at your...
At the place down there, yeah.
And it runs?
Well, I haven't. I gave it to the daughters. I gave it to them stepdaughters. So I hadn't run it in quite some time. I drove at over 275,000 miles on it.
Yeah. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but it's just intriguing. Tell us about when you bought that car and a little bit about it, because that's good history.
See, after World War II, you couldn't buy a vehicle. You couldn't find a vehicle nowhere. Then going to somebody, and we decided to get married. And I didn't have a vehicle. So man, I hunted and I hunted, I couldn't find none. So Mr. Roland Bensall down here told me that his father-in-law was waiting for us. People could put in for vehicles in, and then when the time comes, they got them. He said, well, he's going to get a pickup. He'll have a 37 Plymouth for sale. I said, well, don't matter what it is, just so I have a car. So Dad and I come to town one Sunday down at the Bensall store, and he said, well, my father-in-law got a pickup now. You still want that car? I said, oh yeah, I want that car. He's going to get married on 4th of July. So we drove down to Smithson's Valley down there, and he was out in the field, so he came home. He'd been working out there. He came home. We got to talk, and I said, well, Mr. Barley, I come down to get that pickup. Here, you got a pickup. Yeah, he said, wife don't want to ride in that pickup. I can't sell the car. I said, what? Can't sell that car? No. See, she won't ride in it. She don't want to ride in that pickup. She don't like that pickup. So we talked a little while, and I finally told him, I said, Mr. Barley, my dad, we might as well go home. He said, would you like to see that pickup? I said, well, I'll look at it. So he opened the garage doors and backed it out. Red, black Fender pickup.
The 37 Plymouth?
No,
Is it 30?
the old car was a 37 Plymouth.
37 Plymouth,
But
yeah.
his wife wouldn't do away with that.
Yeah, yeah.
So he said, would you like, finally he said, would you like to have that pickup? I said, what, Mr. Bowles? What do you mean? He said, well, I really wanted a 3/4 ton. So I got a 1/2 ton, but he said, if you want that, then you can have that. He said, you want to drive it? So I drove it out miles of the road and back. I said, what do you want for it? He said, let me go in the house. He said, I bought a spare tire on it, put a license plate on it. Let me go see. He said, come back. He said, give me 11 1/4. You can have it. So Dad had bought my brother a Model T car when he was 21. Of course, I was already 26. And so Dad said, I'll pay $600, you pay the rest. I was so nervous I couldn't hardly write out that check. Drove up here to Blanco, and man, they give you $1,500 for that pickup. I said, you give me $2,000, you can't have it. I was so proud of that thing. So wife to be was working at a laundry in San Antonio. So man, I was proud. I drove down there. I was going to show her that new pickup. So I drove right up in front of the business. She was busy inside, so I walked in there. Get a car? I said, yeah. What'd you get? I said, that pickup right there. I don't want to ride in no damn pickup. There'd been a crack that wide in the floor, I fell right through it. She didn't know that she'd ride in that pickup 9.5 years before we got a car. Bought a 55-pound egg. I still got that vehicle.
Oh, that's a great story. Well, thank you for sharing that. What one of the pieces of history that I understand you perhaps know and remember and have recorded more than anyone is the fire that occurred here in Blanco was in 1929.
1929.
And we'd love to hear about that. 'Cause I've only heard bits and pieces. I really don't know
Years
anything.
ago, they had the old telephone, the old crank telephone.
Mm-hmm.
that was sometime after midnight. The telephone kept ringing. So Mother and Dad went to the telephone. Blanco's on fire. So we went out under 7 miles out.
You were living out 7 miles
7
west
miles,
of here.
yeah, between here and Albert.
Yeah, west of here.
Yeah, west of here. So we could see a glow. That glow. So we got that old 25 Model T touring car, and here we go to Blanco. Of course, we got down there. That in the courthouse square there was a well, dug well there. So I was just 9 years old, so they told me to stand there. And of course, that west side was burning, started down on the lower side and come up this way. So I stood beside that well and watched it burn. And Mr. Moore's store was already burning. And there was a space between Mr. Moore's store and Walter Bensall's store. But then the others, another business next to that, and then there was a barber shop, and then of course the Masonic building, a 2-story building. Well, it was already in the second building when we got there. So then they carried water. So they didn't have no fire department, nothing. They had to carry water from every well in town, bucket by gauge. So it finally got into that 2-story building. And of course, and there was about a 6-foot opening there between that and the hotel conference store.
Did they have a volunteer fire department at that time?
They didn't have nothing.
Was just
no.
people
The bucket
pitching
brigade,
in?
no.
But
And some wells went dry. So that got into that 2-story building, and then they got on what they call a compact store, which is mercantile a while back. Put ladders up there, and they kept pouring water on that. And that 2-story building, I stood there and watched the top. The roof come down, hit the second floor, and fall down. Fire went hundreds of feet there. So they called New Braunfels. Well, before they got in there, they called the New Braunfels Fire Department. Of course, that was the old road, that 311, that old winding road down here. Of course, it took quite a while for the fire truck to get here. So then they was going to try to pump water out of that well, but it was too deep. So they had to take a fire truck all the way down to the bridge down there, laid hoses all the way, pumped all the way up here into town. But they helped save the comfort store. Then they still got water on that. But that whole side burned, except Walter Bensall's store. There's 2-story. It didn't burn down. It just did some damage on the side. So then, of course, I got it in the store where he went on and with his business after that. But they never did know just exactly how this fire started. Of course, this story, just what they heard. Mr. Moore, Mr. Frank Moore, I think was his name, had a store there. He sold a little bit of everything. Bought cream and bought eggs and everything. So Walter Bensall went down in the corner and he built a store down there. And he started selling vegetables cheaper than Mr. Moore did. He paid more for cream and eggs than Mr. Moore did. Well, at that time, to iron the clothes, they had these old gasoline irons. They had to use white gasoline, no leaded gasoline in there. So Mr. Moore, they said, always buy him a pint of white gas for his iron. Just before that, he went and bought a gallon. When there was a station, bought a gallon of white gas. And there's wondering why he bought a gallon of white gas. When that fire started, they went and started pouring water on it, and they said it just spread the fire. So they knew it was a gas fire. So the presumption was that Mr. Moore was trying to burn Walter Bensall down, and then he burned the other part of it down. We don't know what's true. They never did do anything about it, but that was the presumption. That's what it was.
Interesting. Well, what else was on? Could you talk about the square? I mean, you remember the whole square and who was there? What stores were there back in that era? Now we're talking in the 1920s. The fire was 1929. So you have memories of that square and what was there? What went on?
On that corner on the west side, on the lower corner, was Walter Bensall's store, and then Mr. Moore's store, and I think there was another store there, and then the barber shop. They were just rebuilding the barber shop, remodeling the whole thing. I can't think of his name now. Had the barber shop, and they just brought the plate glass and set up in front of the building in front, ready to put it in. After that fire, that just the water glass melted down the wall. It melted that plate glass. Then there was 2-story building, which we know is the Masonic building, because the Masonics, Masons met upstairs. I don't know if they owned the building or not, but then next to that was a comfort store. Then next to that was open space, which used to be just a gravel, just dirt floor in there, but then finally they poured concrete in there, and then they was going to start having benches there.
Mhm, mhm.
But the Baptist and the Methodist and those, that wouldn't work. So they made a skating rink out of it.
Skating.
Man, I mean, they had, man, they people there,
Yeah, what's this is the west side of the.
west side of the square. Uh, Next to where the theater is now.
Yes,
now.
yes.
But then it's, funny part of it was, people would gather there, they'd take little pigs and put axle grease all over them, and then try to catch them on roller skates.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, I'm telling you, if there's anything comical to watch, that was comical.
And what age folks did that? Were these
Oh, that's
were
all
young
ages.
kids or all
Kids,
ages?
all ages.
Is that right?
They tried to teach my dad to skate, and he skates got it, so they tied pillars on his rear, so when he fell out, it hurt so bad. Oh, people gathered to watch, there were people gathered out there just to watch
How
that.
many years did that last, the roller skating area?
Until the 38, I guess, when they built the theater.
When they built
Yeah,
it?
when they built the theater.
Now, the Lindemann store, was that was
That
later
that was J.J. Cage, mercantile store.
at that time?
Yeah. That was a gold Cage store, and then it became Kreider's IGA, then Kneiper's IGA, and then Lindemann's, the Kneiper son-in-law took over.
You have an amazing memory that you can trace all of those connections back. Well, what else on the square? Can you talk about the other parts of the square?
I've got this, I go around that side. See, the road used to come for the bowling alley is up there, and made it returned. And on that corner, there was, just when I was a little boy, there was an old blacksmith shop there, but then they put a lumber yard there. But big lumber sheds along the edge there, next to where the highway is now. Then next to that was Ms. Wall's furniture store, and undertaker deal. Then was the bank. That marble front is just about as big as a bank was, what they got on the front of the bank now. See, now the bank goes all the way up the road. But at that time, the bank was just a small little narrow deal there. Then was Charlie Ance's confectionery. Then there was a hardware store. Then on the end of that, when I was a little boy, was a Chevrolet dealership.
Now, the hardware store is the one that well, existed until relatively
not too
recent
long
years.
ago,
Yeah.
that was
It's
hardware.
now the
And
food.
then there was a Chevrolet dealership, but then the hardware store took that over. Then on the corner where the post office is, that was Charlie Christ's home. It's a Charlie Christ home right there. Then across the street, I don't think there used to be a street, there was just open area, had medicine shows there all the time. There where that barbecue place is now.
Yes, yes.
That was my uncle's Ford garage. Before that, it was Byram and somebody else had a Ford garage there. But at my time, my mother's brother had a Ford garage there. Then across the street over there was the old building falling down, post and stuff. I don't know what it used to be. Then was the drugstore. The drugstore is still there.
It's still there, right? The strict.
Then
one, yeah.
there was a post office. Then there was a telephone office, which is still there.
Is that what was the old Byers
Yeah, the old
building?
Byers, yeah.
The old Byers
Yeah, the
building, yeah.
Byers, Ms. Byers, and Ruby and I can tell you, the girls had to run the telephone there. When they do crank telephone. Then there was just a sign on the next corner. Then go over on the other side. Let's see. The first building on that side was where the blacksmith shop is now. And in this blacksmith shop, if you go in the front door, where Knowles Blacksmith is, right behind the door there's a rock wall sticking out, part of an old rock wall. As far as I know, that was the first courthouse that Blanco County had, in that building. That burned in 1878, I think. All the records are lost. But they say, the first courthouse that Blanco had. That's where all the records were destroyed. Then, of course, Wayne Smith and Glenn Greven built the Rock Garage, which the building is there now. And they had it upstairs on there. Wayne Smith, I think it was, lived upstairs, but they've taken that off now. Then there was the open space there, which it still is, and then there was my uncle's blacksmith shop, mother's brother's blacksmith shop. built wagon wheels, they did all that stuff. It's sharpened plows and all that stuff.
And that's where the restaurant is now?
Where the restaurant
Sunset?
is now. Then there was a little space in between, then there was a filling station with a doctor's office. Dr. Edwards' office was in the back of the building, and a filling station in front. Of course, then for a while it was a novelty store, you know, ribbons and all this kind of stuff. And Dr. Edwards had his office in the back. And I can tell stories about Dr. Edwards, what kind of a doctor he was. But that pretty well. And then, of course, across the street from there was the old Edwards house. Dr. Edwards' home, which is still there. What's it, Chamber of Commerce, what it is now? So that pretty well takes in. But of course, further down and past Edwards' house, there was a big cotton gin there. And in '29, they built the first power plant on the corner where that nursing home used to be.
Yeah.
Built the first power plant there. Old diesel power plant. I think in '29 when they built that power plant there. Mr. Office was running that thing all the time.
So that provided power for the city,
town, yeah.
for the town.
Mr. Glenn Greben and
Long
Mr.
before
Wayne,
PEC came. We didn't dream of it.
Mr. Wayne Smith and Glenn Greben wired all the homes, that old just twisted cord, you know, and that light hanging down, switch the light on.
So just a few homes, probably relatively few homes had
it, yes,
had
first
power.
power, yeah.
But that was a private power company. I mean, they paid,
It was,
or was it?
I don't know who put it in there, what, I don't know who, if the city did it or what, I don't know. But that was there for quite some time, until in the late '30s when, what was it, the REA come in? So then the real electrification come in.
Yeah. Well, tell us about Dr. Edwards. You mentioned interesting stories.
Well, you always heard that he was a real good doctor. So Dad always called him a horse doctor.
Horse doctor.
Horse doctor. But he made his own medicines. He didn't buy them, but he made his own medicine. We used to have out there on the farm and ranch, get together and have these ice cream socials. Man, the women bring pies and cakes and then they ice cream and everything. So after we'd have these parties at night, Dad would wake up and man, he would itch, have whelps on him. Man, he just itched all over. He couldn't sleep or anything. So went to Dr. Fulcher here. He couldn't do nothing for him. Went to New Braunfels. They gave him medicine, but that didn't do any good. Every time I did parties, he'd get that again. So finally they said, why don't you go see Dr. Edwards? Maybe he can cure that. Oh, he said, I don't want to go to the horse doctor. They said, go see him, see what he says. So I went in to see Dr. Edwards. I went with him. I don't know how old I was. And Dad told him, you know, what was happening. Well, he said, let me see, he got an old book out there and it's falling apart. He started leafing through it. Oh, he said, I got it here. I think I know what it is. It's a nettle rash. He says, caused by white sugar. Dad, what do you mean white sugar? He said, it's caused by white sugar. You shouldn't eat no more white sugar because there's something in the refining that's causing you to have this hives and that.
Some kind of an allergic reaction.
Allergic reaction to refined sugar. He said, you should eat just normal, you know, brown, not brown sugar, before that, the raw sugar. But he said, you can't get that, so just eat brown sugar, don't eat no white sugar. And he said, I'm going to give you some medicine. Looked up on the wall and the shelves, about 5 or 6 shelves across the wall. There was all different bottles on there with little tags on it. So he went over and he got to look and he looked and, oh, here it is. So he took that, got a 6-ounce bottle, medicine bottle, poured about that much one of them medicines in there. We walked across the street where that well is over there. Put the well bucket down there and pulled it up and he filled that bottle with water. Shook it up, told Dad to take a teaspoon every night and every morning, not eat no white sugar. He said, if you still have it, you get through with this bottle, I'll fix you up another bottle. Dad took that and he never had it again. He could eat white sugar all he wanted.
How long did Dr. Edwards stay in town? Was he here for a long time?
I don't know just when he finally passed away. It must have been in sometime in the 30s, I guess.
Really?
Yeah. And but another deal, my cousins had eczema. You're breaking out an arm rash and everything. Lived in New Braunfels. They tried doctors in New Braunfels and they went to San Antonio and tried doctors. they couldn't cure him, so they told Aunt Emma, mother's sister, said, why don't you take him to Dr. Edwards? Oh, I don't know what Dr. Edwards, go see what he does. So went there and he did the same thing to them, took some medicine. He made all his medicine out of roots, herbs, and everything. He makes some medicine for the boys, but they never had cured him. He would not tell his wife, and he would not tell his daughter how he made his medicine. He took that to the grave with him. His daughter was in a nursing home with my aunt down there. She said, we tried everything we could to get him to tell us what he did. Took that to the grave with him. But he cured people. I've seen it with my eyes. I couldn't believe it if I didn't see it.
That's right. Well, now, the theater opened, was built in, what, 38?
38.
I think?
38.
You would have been 18 at that time. What do you remember about that? We hear a lot about that theater and
we had a movie
W.D. Glasscock.
We had a movie before that. If you stand on the west side of the square, look at the courthouse, over on the right space there, the rigs from Oklahoma come out here for, I think it's a couple of years. They put a tent there.
Mm-hmm.
And on weekends they have movies in there.
In the tent?
In a tent. They had little shooting stands out there, made a little money, but on weekends, I think 4 nights they had movies in their tent.
What was the first movie you saw?
Well, the first movie I saw, I'm still trying to, they told me the name of it, that was upstairs in the old courthouse. Years ago, they'd go show a World War I movie.
So I bet I know what that is.
What was it?
All Quiet on the Western Front? That was the
I think that's what it was, yes. Because went up there, and they put just straight benches out there, and they put a bed sheet up, I stretched the bed sheet up there.
Up on the top of
The second floor of the courthouse. Because see, the courthouse...
Was that something they did on a regular basis, or was it just occasionally?
That was first movie I know that they had. They said they had one on the west side where the theater is now, but I don't remember that at the moment time.
People paid, I mean, there was a small charge to...
Yeah, small charge to see it.
Mhm.
So they had...
You remember how much it was?
No, I don't remember. Probably a quarter, maybe 10 cents. But they had these big reels, about that big around,
Mhm.
that movie on there, about 5 or 6 of those reels. So they set straight benches up there and put the sheet up there to show it. Fellow set everything up, and he said, well, he said, we're going to turn the lights off, now we're going to show the movie. Turned it on, the end. Whoever had showed that movie before forgot to rewind all those. So he had to stand there and rewind those reels with his hand. We sat there and waited.
We do that with our tape sometimes. So.
The one thing I remember about that, the old biplane, the bi-wings plane, your double wings, they had the machine gun right in front of the pilot, and they were shooting through the propeller. I thought, how in the heck can they do that without shooting that propeller? But it was synchronized.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that was what they said it was, yeah. But he finally showed the movie. And I found out, not too many years, Mr. Glenn Greben was the one that showed the movie. He got paid, his wife could come watch it, and he got for free, but he had to rent it, and he did the movie with his hand. He could speed it up or slow it down. He's one had to rewind all them reels.
How old were you at that time?
I don't know. I have no idea what I was, how old I was. I'd have no
You
idea.
were a young youngster.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, that courthouse, that building was only used for courthouse 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know that.
Right.
But it was used for everything after that. Good gosh. But that's the first movie. Then of course.
What were some of the uses that you witnessed in the courthouse that you remember?
I had 3 surgeries in there.
Is that right? So it was the hospital for many years.
30-something years. There was over 900 babies born there. And when they had to redeal the opening of it again here, well, not too many years back, 700 and something of them got the certificate. Of the 900 that was born there.
I think now they have pictures in the courthouse of
what it
a lot
was.
of
See, it was
courthouse babies, or a list of all the names.
First it was a bank. It still, I don't know if it took a sign off it, but that, man, I'm telling you, just about everything you can think of. For years it stood there vacant.
Mm-hmm.
When people went from the west side of the square, go on the other side, went right through the courthouse. Go across that way, you go through the courthouse.
You mean the doors were open?
The
to
doors
walk
were
through?
open.
Yeah.
Anybody could go. We played in there when we was kids. We run up and down them steps.
Yeah, that's right.
There was nothing in there for years.
Did kids go upstairs and play? Were
Oh,
there?
yeah, we could play upstairs. You had to run up and down them steps, everything. So that was wide open. I had quite a few years. And then I guess first thing they opened there was a hospital then. Dr. Flannery and Dr. Keeley, I think, opened the thing. But there was a hospital for 30-some years. And then the story I've told before, say in the drugstore on the east side, drugstore was in front, and on the right and the back was Dr. Fulcher's office, and on the left was Dr. Edwards, dentist office, Dr. Temple Edwards. Of course, I don't think, Mr. Temple Edwards, I never did see him sterilize any tools. He just washed them and put them back on the tray. So I guess I was 12, 13 years old. I got a toothache. Man, I was hurting so bad, so I went to see Dr. Edwards. Yeah, he said, you got an abscess on that tooth. He says, but I'm afraid I can't pull it because it's got an abscess on it and I can't deaden it. He said, we'll wait a few days. They took me back home, and man, I was hurting so bad I couldn't sleep. And so Dad took me back down there. He said, well, he said, I guess we're going to have to get that tooth out. He tried, but Novocaine in there, and it just squirted back out. It was so infected. He said, we got to get that tooth out. So I know that my dad and Albert Reeby and I don't know who else. One got between my legs, held my legs down. The other two got arms and held me. And Dr. Edwards started pulling that tooth. I screamed that people from the west side of the square had come through the courthouse. They come from, who's getting killed, who's getting killed. But when he pulled that tooth, the roots were all full of pus and everything. But I had relief after he got that thing out. But I mean, I made a noise. I was screaming. But it went straight to the courthouse, go over there. And that's his daughter, not too long ago, at the family reunion, his daughter was telling her about that.
Well, what was the theater when it opened? Was that really a big event?
Oh, yeah.
Was that a major?
Oh, that was something, yeah.
A major happening.
Friday and Saturday they had westerns, and these serials, continued deals. Then of course they had the newsreels and all that stuff, and man, they had a lot of things. And on Sundays and Mondays they had, different movies, family movies. But Friday and Saturday was western, and then Sundays and Mondays was, and one of the movies came there was, I wanted to get a copy of it, I never did. I did get that. Joey Brown and Earthworm Tractors. Oh, Joey Brown, he was a comedian. He was a crazy somebody. Of course, they showed it Sunday afternoon. Wasn't too many people there. Sunday evening, that place was full. They had to turn people away.
The word got out how good it was.
Got out how good it was.
Yeah.
My dad could go see a movie and he'd always go to sleep. But he went to see that movie and he didn't sleep one wink through that thing. Monday evening, they tried to turn people away, so they had to keep it, I think, another day or two to show that movie.
Well, the movies were shown every day, or?
No, that's just Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Friday, Sunday, Sunday.
That's all just
Okay, I think because somehow I had the idea that it was only on Saturday. I guess I'm thinking of
No, it's
Saturday matinees.
Friday and Saturday and Sunday and Monday. But when the Riggs had the old movie out there, the one movie I can remember was Steamboat Round the Bend. Will Rogers was in it. I've tried to find a copy of that, I never did. But they were having a boat race on the Mississippi River. And Will Rogers, he was something anyhow. So there's two boats were racing, and this one guy was always drunk. He was drunk all the time. So they was racing, and they were ahead, and all of a sudden they run out of wood, fire and the old steam deal. And the other boat started passing them, and all of a sudden, this boat started gaining on the other, and he was throwing his whiskey in it. He won the race.
Well, what at the movie, the theater now on Saturday, was that something that mainly the young folks went to on Saturday, or was that?
Most of the young folks, was it all Western? It was always Western. And I could never, as a kid, I could never figure out how these cowboys have the white hat on, the fancy clothes on. They'd fall off the horse and roll down the hill there about 200-300 yards, come up there, and there wasn't no dirt on them.
And they were,
no, I know how they did it, but I didn't know then how they did it.
Well, did people come in from all around, you know,
Yeah.
from ranches, and that
Different
was
places.
sort of a focal
Yeah,
point
but
of activity at that time?
Really the only entertainment they had here.
Yeah, yeah.
The only entertainment they had.
What about food afterwards? People go
Then they
to
go home.
go home,
course.
or was there restaurants or cafes?
See, right next to where they built the theater, where that open spot was where they had the skating rink.
Uh-huh.
See, Mr. Glasscock made two businesses in between there.
Mhm.
The one next to the theater was Wagner's drugstore. Horace Wagner and Josiah Wagner had a drugstore. And the next one is a cafe, the Hills, I think the name of that cafe there, between that what Combat store was.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Of course, people, they'd be open when the movie was over with. And then Charlie Yancey, I think, was still open, the confectionery was still open. But that's about all that was open then.
What were some of the other ways that you entertained yourself, or that kids your age had fun in Blanco, say back in a younger age, before the movie?
Well,
Yeah.
much to do but just play it all.
I mean, were there things in town, or you basically be at home and have
actually,
neighbors or friends that come over?
We generally didn't come to town except on Saturdays.
Right.
Unless Sundays to go to the show or
Uh-huh.
something.
Uh-huh.
But otherwise, out there on the farm, 7 miles out, the only way you
Yeah.
come to town on Saturdays. Everybody came to town on Saturdays.
Uh-huh.
And you couldn't find a parking place anywhere. And at one time, they had this, what they called trades day. If you bought so many dollars worth of stuff, they gave you a ticket. And they'd put that in a basket. Then on Saturday afternoons, they'd draw for cash, probably $5, $10, something like that.
Did they have market days, sort of like we do now,
Not-
once a month?
I don't remember that. No, I don't
On
remember
the,
that. I think they called it trades day at that time. And I know, like when Daddy'd buy a lot of cattle, a whole truckload of cattle feed, he'd get a lot of tickets.
Mhm.
I think Mother won $15, $20 one time. But otherwise, it's, of course, Saturday nights, dances, twin sisters, or contagion,
uh-huh, uh-huh.
different like that.
The whole
For-
family would go?
Oh,
to-
yeah. That,
Kids, everybody?
the teenagers didn't make dates. You didn't go on a date.
Mhm.
You went with your parents. And you got to the dance hall. The girls, but the parents sat around the dance hall or up on the buzzard roost up there and watched everybody. The girls stood on one side and the boys on the other. When the music started playing, you'd go and ask a girl to dance. To dance, you'd take her back. There was no dates. You didn't have a table to set. Of course, that's a little bit different.
A little
today,
different
you know.
now.
Of course, I could, for 50 cents, I'd go to dance. I'd pay a quarter to get in. I'd still go home with a nickel or a dime sometimes. Hamburgers was 15 cents. Hamburgers were that big.
Now, you mentioned twin sisters. Were there other dance halls that you
Yeah.
would go to?
Twin Sisters was always the first Saturday. Second Saturday was Contagia. The third Saturday was Flugrats up the river.
Mm-hmm.
And the fourth Saturday was Fisher Store. If there was 5 Saturdays, then say the first month that had 5 Saturdays, Twin Sisters have extra dance. And so on down the line. But every Saturday night, Smith's Valley had a dance on Sundays, but most people, farmers didn't go there because you had to get up early Monday morning to go to work. But there was a dance every
Fisher
Saturday.
was the fourth. Well, that's
Fourth
quite
Saturday.
a series. You know, it just happens that you might want to look at, on your way out, there's a picture photograph here, but there's an architect, a woman who has done a study of Texas dance halls, and she's taken very good pictures of all of the ones you mentioned in this area.
They think the Twin Sisters Dance Hall is the oldest dance hall, but there's no record of it. Now it's Green's, it's the oldest dance hall, but I don't know, years later I got a copy of the deed when they bought a half acre for the Twin Sisters Dance Hall. And a couple of years ago I think they added on to it because the building has got more than a half acre now. But in this deed it says this will be used for entertainment. If it's ever stopped being used for entertainment, the land goes back to the original owners. It's copied in the deed like that. So it's from the Bremers that got that.
Do you remember what year that
No, I got it at home. I got the copy of the deed at home. But then they had a bowling alley right there close too, so that was entertainment too. It burnt down in 60-something, I think.
You mentioned the Glasscocks. Could you tell they're more stories about the Glasscock family? We've heard from others.
They set quite a few shady deals, I think. Because there's one of them, I don't know, I can't remember what his name was, the older one.
WD, I think, was the one that built the theater.
Yeah, and those
WD.
buildings, the two buildings beside it. But the one of them now, I can't remember his first name. Sometime you'd see him with a big scar, like he had a big scar. The next time you'd see him, he didn't have a scar. They had some kind of a court case one time in John City. Went over there, and they had smart lawyers, but come to find out this lawyers from Dallas outdid them. Well, lost their case, but I was just a kid, because they had court cases. The parents would take me to see what was going on in court. That's how I found out how crooked court is.
But it seems to me I've heard something about the schoolhouse, the old schoolhouse being built with stones from the Glasscock Ranch.
Well, that was the third high school. The first high school where Mother went, I think, was a two-story building. And it burnt down, and they had school down in the courthouse building. How long Mother went, I don't know, never did find out, forgot, we weren't in genealogy at that time. But then they rebuilt the one that's the original one. If you're driving from going up that way to the front, that was the second high school they built. And then the one to the left is the one I helped build in. I forget if it's junior high what it is now.
Yeah, I know.
Junior high. But that was in 39, 40, something like that, I think.
And you helped build it. Tell us about that.
Well, it's what they call the NYA, National Youth Administration. Give the children, young boys, that's what Roosevelt started the NYA. So we got out there, and there were just trees and stuff out there, nothing out there. So Mr. Claude Kidder was going to be the foreman. So he called me over and said,
This would have been in the, what, early 30s?
39 or 40, I forget, 39 or 40. So he called me over and said, we're going to stake this thing off now, we're going to lay it off. Said, you help me read this blueprint. I said, Mr. Kidder, I've never seen a blueprint in my life. I just went through the 8th grade at McKinney School up there. He said, well, he said, I'll show you how. I said, you read this and read that, and we'll stake the whole thing off. Staked it off, and all of his foundation was dug by hand. The concrete was poured, mixed in a box, not no ready-mixed concrete. Poured all the foundation. Then one crew would go out on the Glasscock Ranch and quarry the rocks, break the rocks off, and then they'd bring them over here. And each fellow had a table there, and you had to take a chisel and a hammer and square that rock off. Make it look right. If it wasn't square, you couldn't put it in the wall. And we helped build the walls that time.
You must get a lot of satisfaction going by that old building. Maybe you find a rock, find a rock that you remembered chiseling.
Yeah, well, it's got 21 cents an hour. It was a NYA, National Youth Administration. I couldn't finish because Dad needed me back on the farm before we got the auditorium finished. But another thing, I can tell you what I told you, my uncle had a blacksmith shop on the south side of the square there. When Dad didn't need me, I could work for him. He put up windmills, built these rock tanks and poured concrete, anything. Laid water lines, big water lines by hand. So I worked for him. And I'd stay with my grandparents here in town. I didn't have to go all the way home. We'd work 5.5 days. And sometime 8-hour days, sometime 10-hour days. Saturday at noon, my pay was $7.
That seemed like a lot of money back then, though, too.
He raised me to $10. I thought I was a millionaire. I really felt like so.
Well, you must know, all of the ranches around Blanco. You've probably been on these or worked on them or had friends.
No, not on the ranches. I didn't work on, but I know a lot of the people. But not too many years ago, I'd come up here to the Bowling Cafe, and I'd know over half the people. I don't know anybody now anymore. They're all strangers. The older ones are all gone, so I don't know hardly anybody anymore.
Did you ever join in on those famous domino games, 5 o'clock in the morning?
No.
Bowling Alley Cafe?
No, that was after, see, that Bowling Alley wasn't built till 47.
Okay, that's right.
47, yeah. I lived right there beside it. But there's another story I can tell. When Lyndon Johns was running for, I think, state representative, when he first started politics. Where the bowling alley is now, that was just an open field. That big house on the corner was there, and a little house behind it, but that other was Mr. Galba's garden. There was nothing there at that time, so all of a sudden, Saturday afternoon, I heard that Lyndon John was going to come electioneer in Blanco. He was coming to the helicopter. He was flying town to town to the helicopter. So good gosh, everybody, man, that went over and they gathered over there in front of that. Finally, here come a helicopter, landed there in the patch. He had a speaker. He said, stand back till the rotor quits turning. So then he had a little platform on the side of the helicopter. He started making his speech. Of course, as a kid, I must have been 38, I guess. I don't remember what he told about. He was running for office and everything. And he said, I guess you see my mode of travel, how I get from town to town. But I cannot call it what it is. I'm going to call it a heliocopter because there's too many Baptists live in this town. That's the only part of his speech I can remember.
Did you remember it? Well,
I
that's
could
pretty,
remember that.
pretty good
That's
line.
right with a bowl there.
Well, now, living out 7 miles west of town, you weren't all that far from Lindendale. Did you have much contact with the folks out there?
Not too much,
in
no.
Lindendale?
I knew where it was up there, yes. See, every community had a school. Just a lot of communities had a cotton gin. Now, Lindendale, that was up River Road, what we call the River Road, 1888 now. And of course, Live Oak, it was right there by the Flugrad store. That's where Live Oak School was. I went to McKinney School, which is on McKinney Loop now.
And then for high school, you came into Blanco. Is that, or they had a high school out there?
I didn't go to high school.
Oh, I see. You didn't. Yeah.
See, out there at McKinney, they had only 7 grades. And the 8th grade, you had to go to Blanco. So when my brother went to school, he was 5 years older, and he got to go to year at Blanco, and then he had to quit school because Dad needed him on the farm. So he always said, you go to 8th grade just like your brother did. So when it come time for me to go to the 8th grade, there was 3 grades, there was no pupils in. There wasn't but 15 or 16 pupils in all. So the teacher could teach the 8th grade. So I took the 8th grade out to McKinney School. So I never did get to come to high school.
Did they have reunions still? You know, the old school.
See, the old school is still there.
Probably not that many folks left.
You know where the old McKinney School is? Where? Dang it.
You know, I don't think I've seen it. I know the Live Oak and the
Dang it, all the name is
Lindendale.
mine that lives there now. In the history book, it says that building was built in 1878 for a Church of Christ. Mr. McKinney gave the land. And they built that for Church of Christ, and then later they made a school out of it. Billy Joe Berger, you know where he lives? Billy Joe Berger lives. He still lives in the schoolhouse. He's still made rooms out of it, but the school is still there. Where I went to school, the building's still there.
But you lived in Blanco or near Blanco until what? Until when did you actually leave this area?
I went to service in what was Pearl Harbor was 41, was it? Yeah. And then in February I went into service. Going to service 3 years, 8 months, 15 days.
You joined the Navy? Did you say Navy or Army?
Army. I was drafted. And then I went overseas, stayed there 25 months in one day. I didn't mind that one day, but that 25 months sure was a long time.
Well,
went to Europe.
Yeah, that one day.
Then I came back.
Where were you? In what?
Europe.
What? In Europe?
3rd Armored Division. Set with Hodges, General Hodges. Supposed to go in on D-Day, but thank God we didn't go in because I probably would be here now. We went on 18 days after D-Day. I stayed till the war was over. Then I come back to Blanco here, helped build buildings, tourist courts down here, helped build them, and there's quite a few buildings around.
Did Blanco feel different to you after being in the war for a couple of years? Or
it wasn't too much, it's about the same thing.
Yes, yeah.
The same thing. Then got married, first time, 4th of July, 46.
And your wife put up with that pickup truck for 7 years, huh? She didn't like it. She never
You know, the bowl alley is, and there's a big building right beside it on the corner. Then there's a little 12 by 16 room behind it. I don't know if it's real estate or some kind of office. It's a historical building anyhow. First wife and I lived in that building for 51 weeks after I got married.
Oh, right off the square,
That
little old
you know where the bowl
building.
alley is?
Yeah.
Then that
yeah.
big house on the corner,
Uh-huh.
that little building right behind it.
Yeah.
12 by 16, one room, no water, no nothing in there.
Oh, really?
Water faucet outside, toilet outside.
Mm.
Took a bath up the river, went up the river and took a bath. Lived there 50, how many couples have lived 51 weeks like that now?
Oh, my
Paid
goodness.
$4 a week rent.
A bath in the river.
Yeah,
You just go jump in the river.
go up the river. It's dams up there now, but there's a place that deep places, we take a bath up there. Then I built a garage apartment, just a little ways down here on the right where the Bucks live, where all that junk is. Built my garage apartment there. Lived there almost 2 years, and then I was 49 and moved to Cibolo.
And you've been in Cibolo
Since 49.
Ever since 49.
You know where Randolph is now? The Tobacco Road going out of Randolph?
I haven't been out
I've
that
been out
way a
there.
long time.
See, when I got to Cibolo in 49, there was a little over 100 people, and now it's over 12,000.
Well, New Braunfels is one of the fastest
Oh,
growing
yeah.
cities in the country, probably.
Yeah, I used to do carpenter work, built my own home, took me 5 months. But I lived in Cibolo because I worked at the Pearl Brewing Company then for a little over 30
really?
years. Yeah, I worked there over 30 years.
In San Antonio, or?
Yeah.
So you drove in, you commuted into San Antonio?
See, I built in Cibolo because I could find work in San Antonio, Seguin, and New Brown was all
Mhm.
about the same distance.
Mhm.
But then I worked 30 years, 1 month at the Pearl Brewing Company. The building I worked in is just a hole in the ground now. The bottle shop burnt down.
Now, do you still have family or relatives living here in Blanco, or are they still?
Dick Knall, the one that owns a blacksmith shop, that's my
Mhm.
cousin,
Mhm.
first cousin. And that's just about all around here, I think, now. Can't think of anything else right now, anybody else.
Yeah, these are wonderful memories. Are there other, I don't know, high points or low points of life in Blanco that occurred to you? Or?
Well, I seen when they built the park, Blanco State Park in
Yes.
1933.
Yes.
I watched them build that. At that time,
Was that controversial? Was there any, opposition, or everybody supported? I
well,
assume
they supported it,
everybody
because that's what
supported that.
Roosevelt started. And we knew it as a tree army camp. That's all we knew it is. But then we found it was a CCC's, Civilian Conservation Corps. And I often wondered why did they call it the tree army camp. But found out that when they first started the Civilian Conservation Corps, they planted the forest. And I guess that's the reason they called it the tree army camp. Because that was, of course, then later they built parks and did everything. But see where the camp was, if you go across the new bridge down here, just on the left, that's where the CCC camp was. I don't know how long we had to furnish 20 gallons of milk every morning at 5 o'clock. We had to milk 12 to 15 cows.
To feed the workers.
Yeah. Every morning at 5 o'clock we'd have 20 gallons of milk. Took your old Model T touring car and took the seat out of the back and set the 2 10-gallon cans in the back.
Fresh raw milk.
Well, the milk the evening before and the next morning. No refrigeration, there was no refrigeration, didn't have no electricity out there, nothing. Then they built the...
Were they living in tents, or how?
Yeah, first tents, yeah. The officers had I think they all had tents to begin with, and I think officers had buildings later. But that's all houses in there now. I got pictures of that.
Really?
The Army camp, yeah. But then another thing, they built the clubhouse, built the dams, and then the last thing they were building is down here where the entrance used to be. See, the entrance used to be right down here where the bridge is. That was the entrance to the park, concession building and everything. And just a little ways over Town Creek, there's a little arch bridge there. Of course, you don't go across it anymore, just the workers. We come to town one Saturday, and they almost had that thing finished one side. They had to do some work, get rock work. So well, they're just about through with it. And that was the last thing they was going to do. We come to town the next Saturday, and there was no more bridge there. rocks laying all over. What the heck, I must have built it crooked or something. Well, another week or so, bridge was finished and everything. Often wondered, why did they rebuild that bridge? What was the matter? But I guess it's been about 10 years ago, 12 years ago, I was in a doctor's office, I don't know, with these Parks and Wildlife magazines. In there I found out why they did that. They had so much time allotted, so much money allotted to build that park. Then they realized it's almost through that bridge, they had to do some more work and take up some more time. They had to tear that bridge down and rebuild it. That was in 1933, mind you. I wanted to take that magazine home, I forgot about it, but I read it, that's why they rebuilt that bridge. Even then, you know, everything was government.
Well, we were probably less efficient today than we were back then, I think, with our
And at
budgets.
Upper Lake there by the clubhouse, after they built that, in summertime, they used to have boat races on that. That was so wide. Sunday afternoons, they'd have boat races on that. Now it's just a small channel there now.
Yeah, yeah.
When they first built it, that was wide.
Is that right?
Yeah, it's a wide area there.
Boat races like rowboats or canoes or power?
Power boats.
Power boats?
Oh, yeah, power boats. Yeah. They'd run from that dam up to the Condalia Road up there. Around that.
Well, you've mentioned several times that you collect things and keep things at home. You must have volumes and volumes of records and documents, photographs.
Well, I got some, but most of second wife now started at genealogy, studying the families. My mother lived to be 98, but when we got into genealogy, studying the families, it's too late. She couldn't remember too much stuff. But when second wife and I got married, we drive around the country. Oh, so-and-so lived here, but go in one ear and out the other. But then later we wished we'd listened. But then we had to go to courthouse and find all that. So I've been married twice. Both wives died of cancer. So.
Right. Right.
But it was so interesting to find through the families, you know, all the families. I've got deeds. The wife would do the families, and I would do the deeds. Get copies of deeds. Because years ago they put in there how many silver dollars they gave or how many gold coins they gave for that piece of property.
It's all written in the
all written in there. Now you buy a piece of property for $1 million, you know what they put on there? $10 and other consideration. That's all they're putting on. But I tell you, some were comical. I found one where my great-grandfather married my great-great-aunt. New Brownville. You come out to Rebecca Creek over there at Spring Branch, about 320 acres. A couple of years later, there was 640 acres to the west of there, almost to 281, where that Spring Branch bowling alley is. And some people, a couple of guys that bought it, and they owed $1.80 something tax. They couldn't find the guys to pay the taxes. So he goes to the courthouse in New Braunfels, makes a new deed, pays the back taxes. He bought 640 acres for $6.91. Now they're bringing anywhere from $8,000 to $10,000 an acre. But that's what made these old deeds so popular. I've got all that stuff. And then the families, family genealogy. So it was so interesting. Now a lot of people are not interested, like Dick Canal, my cousin, not interested. My brother, in the story, I'd go to see him about our great-grandparents. I don't give a damn. So they just wasn't interested. But it's so interesting, and now that since that wife passed away, and I'm trying to, I got two stepdaughters, which are my second cousins. Their father and my mother were first cousins. But see, a lot of these families, they don't know, so I'm trying to get all this stuff back to the original families, because I don't want anything thrown away. Because my great-grandfather was Johann Heinrich Fischer. Then the girl's great-great-grandfather was John Fischer, your twin sisters, and then we found there was a Fritz Fischer. So we thought, wonder what how are they kin? We couldn't figure out no way it was kin. So when the girl's grandparents passed away, they had a lot of records from letters from Germany. I told them, just go throw them records in the fire, burn all them letters up. So the oldest daughter, she said, my mother saved stamps, maybe she'd like some German stamps. So she saved a little pack of it. in one of those letters, we found that those three were brothers. If that letter had been burned up, we'd have never known.
Amazing.
So they were all right in this same area. There were three
Do
brothers.
you have old photographs as well at home that
Oh,
you've
yeah.
kept from?
Some of them, I don't know who they are.
Hmm?
Mother had a lot of them. She did write on some of them, but a lot of them she didn't know who they were. It's a shame that
Yeah.
you got so many old photos that nobody knows who they are.
Did you take photos yourself back?
Oh, wife took, man,
Your wife?
I got boxes of parades and air shows and everything. She took pictures everywhere. Rock fences, the old rock fences.
Really?
A lot of them call them stone fences, but
Mhm.
I call them rock fences.
Mhm.
When I was a small child, neighbor, he was way older than I was, he said, when I was a boy, my father used to contract to build those rock fences. And he said, we'd have to go and dig a foundation, dig down in the ground, go quarry the rocks, lay them up 3 and 4 foot high. For every yard, they got 25 cents.
25 cents.
He told me that. I thought, well, that sounds odd. But then later in history books, I found that was what they got. 25. He said a lot of days we didn't make a yard, but it was always that much money. If the rancher would furnish the rocks, then they got 17 cents a yard. But that's where those fences are still standing today.
Yeah, we have.
But they wasn't tore down.
Old remains of some of those old fences. I always assumed that the people living on the ranch just went out and did it, but you mentioned that contracting
Yeah,
out
that
to,
is-
people made a living
Hire
just
people to do
doing
it.
that. Yeah.
Because I couldn't believe when he told me that, I thought, damn, that don't sound right. But then I found out that that was the going rate back then. Because a quarter would go somewhere, but after Ben Sells had their store there, Mother would come to town, and about $3.50 took her and me and my brother to carry the stuff to the car. Now one piece of meat that big goes
You
to
got a piece of-
And if
Yeah.
Mother didn't come to town, she'd give Dad a slip of what she wanted. He'd walk into Ben Sells' store and say, I'm gonna be back at 4 o'clock to pick it up. 4 o'clock, you'd go in there, just all in boxes. The clerks put it together for you. How many would do that nowadays? That's, I watched them build that south side, I watched them build those stores, that's all in my story there. Walter Bensell, how he started out. Started in the corner where some of his stuff was burned and then moved, sold that and built down there. It had owned on before that. And of course, Roland Bensell built the bowling alley. The first 2 alleys, they called it the Blanco Valley Bowling Club. When I was a small child, my Uncle Aunt lived up past Flugrats up there. And to see back in the past, way back there was a long building there, and that found out that was the Blanco Valley Bowling Alley, because they didn't use it anymore. So when they built this bowling alley, they went and got those 2 lanes up there and put them in this building down there.
That's a great piece of history. Well, we don't want to totally wear you out today. You've been wonderful, and we're just delighted to have shared all this interesting memories with you, and hearing your thoughts and recollections of Blanco. So we're very much indebted to you for sharing this with us.
Well, I hope I helped you out.
Oh, I think it's been wonderful.